talk about bees. Let's talk about the bee post. A lot of interesting reactions on a post about bees and flight, right? Flight in quotations. So here's the post if you want to see it. All right, check out the post. Beep, boop, boop, boop. Just for a refresher. All right, should have been enough time for you to read that and take it all in. So, for those of you who actually know me and talk to me, I'm not very straightforward. Unless you talk to me directly in the DMs or in person, or are on paid time. But besides that, I like to use Instagram to see how people feel about things. Challenge perspectives, all right? Shake up spectrums. Introduce things that usually people aren't looking at, or things that people are looking at, but they're not looking at the different layers, or they're not seeing it with the different lens, okay? This is one of those things. The bee thing is one of those things. So let's shit on some perspectives for a little bit here. All right, so it's talking about levitation and how bees levitate, right? They utilize frequency and vibration to fly, to levitate. The word levitation is almost 200 years older than the word for flight. So that means that the word for levitating is older. That means it came first. So that means way back when people would see things, which we modernly know as flying, it was a stem of levitation. The original definition for levitation actually denotes that. So I'll put that right here. To make oneself light, right? The ability to be light enough to fly, to levitate, to hover above the ground. That came before viewing it as flight. Flight came afterwards. So that means, just by technicality, bees are levitating because they're making themselves light. They're hovering, they're flying above the ground. Therefore, they are in fact levitating. The word for flight comes later. And as you can see, it's basically just a little jumbling, right? A little minor switch from levitation, but it's more isolated. Talking about propulsion, right? So birds, most birds, flap up and down and front and back. And then sometimes they'll swoop for different motions, okay? Like planes, they rest on the existing airwaves, and from propulsion, right, launching themselves, they catch those waves and then stay afloat. Okay? Planes. Birds do the same thing, but they're wafting it. Right? So it's like keeping themselves afloat like this, or like this. They're resonating, they're sending a pulsar energy wave of air from energetics of flapping and pressing down to keep themselves resting upon the airwaves. And you can see that in flight, in slow motion video, which people love. Slow motion video is good just because people can't deny it, right? So when you see it fast, sometimes you miss things. Slow motion's cool because you get a nice little harder look at it. What's going on? Some things that are missed, okay? Great. So then, from there, we look at a different bird, the hummingbird. And it has a different wing motion. It's likened to if someone's treading water to stay afloat, right? Because when you're trying to swim and gain ground to come up in the water, you're doing the same thing like the birds, right? You're trying to propel yourself up and to the water surface and out. When you're trying to stay in the water and tread, you move your legs around and your arms, you kind of do this motion, right? Yeah. What you're doing is you're sort of wafting like this. And the funny thing is, bees do the same fucking thing, as do hummingbirds. So here's some bee footage. And as you see, it's almost like painting, right? With a paintbrush, if you go back and forth. They're wafting their wings fast enough that they create a buzz, and a buzz is a hum, which is a what? Oh my gosh, it's a frequency. What? Which is energetic. What? Same with the hummingbird. So then they're doing it fast enough in order to create a hum. Well, hum happens when what? Things vibrate. Like this vibration plate. What? Hold on a second. So they actually do use that? Yes, they do. It's just, I don't know, Google's the number one source of learning, I guess. I don't know. Same thing with, what? Acoustic levitation, where you use frequencies to make things float, like water or beetle shells. What? Hold on a second. So then frequency actually does cause things to levitate? So then if something is emitting a buzz or a hum, that means it is emitting a tone, a frequency, an energy, allowing it to take flight. Fucking A. To levitate, be above the ground. So they're wafting, these bees, these hummingbirds, wafting, creating air pockets that shoot up through the wings as they do this, allowing them to hover, which is why bees and hummingbirds can fly different than other birds. That's why they can, right? Shoot all over the place and change their directive on a whim. Because why? You can't do that with regular flight. Other birds don't have that same level of accuracy and acuity with changing direction on the spot, hovering. When you see a hawk hover, it's way different, but it uses the same sort of mechanizations that the bees and the hummingbirds use. Fast flaps, like this, wafting to stay in place as opposed to the up and downs, to sit and ride on the airwaves. Because the bees and the hummingbirds do this faster, then they have what? More directed control. More options. You can do that with levitation. With flight, you have to catch a wave and keep on riding it out. And then you have to drop the wave to descend and land. Levitation, hovercrafts, go up, in, around, and can go vertically down, like hummingbirds and bees can. Because they're riding, resting upon the airwaves by the way that they fly, they're treading air. They're treading air to stay afloat. Okay? It's pretty serious shit. It really is. So it is buzzing, humming, levitation, riding airwaves. Everything emits a frequency, by the way. Everything does. It has an inherent frequency. Everything has energy. So then using energetic frequencies by buzzing to hum, vibration, same way like in Dune, right? Of course this is a sci-fi movie, right? It's hypothetical, but it's still based on dragonflies that actually do the same thing, right? It's based in reality. Dragonflies, when they're on the ground, then they start to what? Buzz and hum in order to then get themselves airborne. They don't have the ability to run or walk and get flight or to drop in, right? Like birds do, right? Geese, they'll get a running start. Ducks will do it, start to flap on the water until they get airborne. Dragonflies rest on things, get the wings going, and then they're off. And they can do the same thing with the change of direction. It's a different style of flight. Riding on top of airwaves, creating enough of a pulse, enough of a vibration to almost create an anti-gravity phenomenon to allow them to move in pulses and ride on the existing energy waves that are all in the air. That's how we have radio. That's how we can have Wi-Fi. There has to be a pre-existing signal in order for other signals, other frequencies to piggyback off of. They're not creating their own waves. They're piggybacking. That's why it's called broadcasting, right? Radios broadcast because they send out their signal off of using existing signals. The frequency is always there. That's the joke. That's the joke in the bee post. All of it has to do with frequency. All of it has to do with vibration, right? The number one rule of polarity. I'm getting energized. I was just like doing a free flow before filming this video, so I'm still out of breath and sweating. They still utilize frequencies, right? The number one rule is that everything, moves, nothing rests. Everything has a vibration, everything has a rhythm, everything has a frequency, right? So if people know that, then you understand that there's a bit of a joke, a play going on, because no one can really know that anyways, right? Talking about this, to where Earth always has a frequency. So then one could hypothetically say that by buzzing enough to get themselves attuned to the existing frequency of whatever the air is, wherever the Earth's putting out, maybe that's what lifts them off. Unless someone looks at that, anyone else is just guessing. It's just hearsay. Unless you actually look to see if that's the case or not, you don't know, right? You're subject to whatever the latest Google guy said. But all those things are there, and the word existed before. So then before they knew it as levitating, until it got isolated afterwards as an offshoot of levitation, being flight. But things still flew before the introduction of that word. So I do these things sort of like as thought experiments to see how people view things, and then to show people's reactions to worldviews, and how when worldviews and things that they know to be a certain way get challenged, how defensive people actually get, because they feel like it's a challenge to themselves. They feel like it's an affront to their existence, and they feel afraid, like they have to fight for their life, because hold on a second, whoa, I knew that to be a certain way. And I'm going to use the things that I use to entrench my philosophy and understanding of the thing, to make me feel better about myself that it's being challenged. Because then it makes me feel afraid, because then I feel like I don't actually know. And then when people don't know things, especially when they don't have a lot of experience in dealing with adversity and things of that nature, right? The uninitiated, then they panic. They become afraid, and their first response is to lash out. So it also shows you psychology and the psychology of people, right? Because when you say things that are designed to be outside of the box, then they feel more comfortable, because then they're like, oh, I don't feel like I have a lot of experience in that matter, right? Oh, that's supposed to be over my head, right? Rocket science, I'm not really supposed to know what that shit's about, so then I don't feel threatened by it. I just say, I don't know that shit, I don't go there. But then when you take a common convention, like things like flight or bees, things that, everyone sees, everyone interacts with, everyone's had an experience, with some animal, some bird, some bee at some point in time, and they know it to be a certain way. So then when you challenge that, you get to see what people are really about. You see who believes in belief, who believes that there are things that we don't know, who believes that things actually are deeper than they're commonly presented on the surface, and who feels threatened by those things and reserved, and feel like they have to fight because their worldview is being challenged. And then if their worldview starts to get challenged, they feel self-conscious. Maybe there's a lack of confidence, maybe there's a lack of self-esteem, right? Because they have to know things to be a certain way, black and white, in order for them to be comfortable in the worldview that they've crafted for themselves. Which is why it's healthy for people to shake that up. Because when people get entrenched in beliefs, that's how half the fucking human problems happen, from racism to sexism to religious clashing, right? All that shit comes from people entrenching their beliefs and never having them challenged or explore beyond what's there initially in order to find what's actually there, right? People accept the medical industry, medical profession, medical practice, science. For before, it was just everything on the outside, right? They see stuff, and then all of a sudden, if you think of a first group of people ever, then someone dies and they see them decompose, and they're like, holy shit, would you look at, what are that? Bones. Hey, muscles, organs. Whoa, shit, look at that. That's what's inside us. There's more than what's just on here. Or even if we feel the hard parts, we're the first people, we've never seen it before. Whoa, that's crazy. So then maybe if there's layers deeper, then there's going to be layers deeper to other things too. And maybe we didn't know everything exactly the way that we thought it was. For most people, that brings fear. But for people that get more experience, right, get initiated into life, then they're like, and they can rest and live with it happily.